That's why good morning, everybody, and another warm welcome to this council meeting, and welcome to members of the public who are in the chambers or watching on live stream. Welcome councillors and staff, and welcome to any media who might be watching. So first of all, go to apologies. If you have any apologies, we do note that we've got Councillor Cowles joining us online, everyone else in the chamber, and also acknowledge Mr. Simon Neal, who's with us today. Do we have any declarations of interest? There are none. Okay, we're going to move to the public forum, and we've got Tanaya Kelly, who's going to speak to us, I believe, on housing. So welcome, Tanaya, if you'd like to come and take a seat. And happy to hear from you. Just wait a moment while she gets set up.
Okay, thank you for meeting me today. So today I'm going to talk about housing, and I just wanted to reiterate that this is my personal opinion. So despite any groups I'm involved with or committees, it is a reflection of my personal opinion only. So the reason I have come in to talk about housing is because I am fully aware that we've got a housing crisis. We've got a lot of overcrowding. We've got families and children living in cars, like children going to school and having, behavioural issues. And I just don't know if the council realise how dire the situation is. So I would just like to talk about that. The reason I've come to talk about it is because I really feel like we have solutions to solve this. We have developers, we have lands, we have government legislation under the national planning standards to allow more houses to be built. You now have, since November, a housing strategy. Under page 32 of the housing strategy, one of the actions is to enable medium density zones with more compact living, aligned to the national policy statement on urban development, which was brought in 2020, to provide minor residential units in urban areas, enable multiple occupancy and community titles, and this was to be done by 2022. And it's great that we have a goal. You obviously realise the dire need of the situation, but it's very frustrating when we seem to have all the pieces of the puzzle available to us and they're not getting put together. We're really lucky we've got an MP here. Again, we've got the $3.8 billion Housing Acceleration Fund that could have been utilised. McBrimer Homes, in the last 3 years, they've built 80 homes. So in context, we have St. Kevin's, they provide accommodation for a lot of our factory workers. There is, I think, 50 to 70 people living there in single room units. So they've still got their families to bring over. These people are without their families and don't see their children. And then you've also got people trying to buy up their own accommodation. That's always not possible. There's also discrimination in the rental market. So you've got people applying for homes, the 52 plus homes for over a year, they're not getting the rentals. I've spoken to landlords I know myself. Again, there's definitely discrimination against a certain demographic of people. So what else did we want to say? Yeah, for myself, I just can't imagine I don't know what the solutions are, but I feel if the government made it a priority to maybe property agencies and said, right, you have to start targeting Māori and Pacifica and making them a priority, so that maybe myself as a European, if I had to sleep in a car with my children in the back, I have a 15-year-old son and a young daughter, I'd find that very awkward. I'm sure my son would find it very awkward going through puberty, having to wake up on a winter's morning and, you know, wait for the pool to be open or the gym membership to have a shower before going to school. It's not the most comfortable sleep, and it's not really the greatest start we're giving our community to have schooling and an education. I mean, to be honest, some of the places, and it's great that, you know, the community have come together and tried to provide housing solutions, but they are still substandard. And I see all the plans, I see the housing strategies that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, but actually making choices to make that happen, I don't see it happening.
If you're happy to finish there, just allow some time for some comment and some questions to know. So thank you very much for that. And yes, we are very aware of the situation, and you know, one or two of the councillors who are working closer to that coalface will be very, very aware of that. We certainly have tried to get funding from the government because we want to play our part, and in addition to the 90 units we already have across the district, we want to add to that. But the government has continually said no to applications that we have made for funding, and we can't do it without some subsidy of cost. And you know, we've certainly been working on over a number of years now on an opportunity to work with the Presbyterian support to actually create an 80 house.
I understand that, Gary, but those
development.
they weren't made while you had a housing strategy. The Cluthamere, they have got a whole subdivision they're building through council.
Yeah. So please let me just finish off. So there's a number of things that we have done and that we've got on the go. The housing strategy itself was a key part of that, and it is about lining up the plans and strategies so that we can get the government funding. The other is that we do have a housing, a person dedicated to housing, recruited, I believe, and haven't met that person yet, but I'm not sure if Mr. Palmley wants to make any comment on that, what that role will entail.
Yeah, so some of the issues around housing, they're a long-term fix. They take, you know, it takes years from when you decide to do something to actually getting housing on the ground. That person is working to, you know, both internally with our team, but also with partners to look at how we can accelerate the delivery of housing, looking at our own sites, looking at partner sites, and looking at how we support others. And indeed, council will be considering a request shortly for some support to enable some more housing to be provided. But the challenge we have is that it isn't within our grasp to sort it all. We need that government support as well. This is a challenge for a lot of smaller councils across the South Island. So we're working with our neighbours in Canterbury to join forces to try and lever in funding. A lot of the funding goes to urban areas at the moment, and the rural areas tend to miss out. And so we're looking at how we can work with our neighbouring councils to present a package of housing to the government and its agencies to get the money in, to get the houses built that we need and that our families need.
But I mean, if you look at our local developers, they've built 80 houses in the last 3 years.
And they sold each of those for $600,000 or $700,000.
Yes,
and that's the problem. We could build as many houses as we wanted to if we were going to get the money back for them, but this has got to be an investment that we make, and so we need the government subsidy to help. And if I'm going to be very blunt about it, Kaingaora have been absolutely woeful in delivering any new housing south of Christchurch for many years. It started now, but they need to get backsides into gear and actually get into the Waitaki district and do something more meaningful than what they've been doing. It shouldn't be up to local councils to try and solve all these problems. Central government has to play their part, and anything you can do to lobby central government on our behalf would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The other thing I did want to also comment on is that there was another member of the public to speak today. We registered, and it was talking about the same issue, and they were told, they were non-European, and they were told that it would be best that they sent an email.
So that was my call. I have no idea who they are or what ethnicity they are or anything. What I was told was they were coming to talk about their specific situation, and this is not a forum for that type of discussion. It's much better that they talk to us directly as individual councillors and myself as mayor, and we can hear that story. So we said yes to you because you want to talk about housing generally. They want to talk about their specific personal situation, and that is not a topic for this public.
That may have been a language barrier, but just in future, I mean, for someone who doesn't speak English, and it's a very scary environment, even getting to the door in this place, very scary. And then to have a phone call and an email going, oh, maybe you shouldn't do it, but then I get to speak at the meeting. It doesn't provide much safety for them or make them feel comfortable to come into this environment when it's available for everyone.
It is available for everyone, but there's always guidelines around what we can talk about.
That,
and
but maybe
there is absolutely, please hear me out. There's absolutely no problem us hearing from them. This is not the forum for that private discussion about their personal circumstances. And so that was, hopefully we've made that quite clear to them. We absolutely want to hear from them, but it's got to be appropriate for this discussion, for this forum. So we've now given you 13 minutes, or 11 minutes, sorry. So yeah, we do need to move on, but thank you very much for coming in. Just to reassure you that I think the workers at St Kevin's are here on temporary, seasonal work permits, and they are generally, I believe, not ones that are going to have families joining them. I'm looking at Hannah because she's been working with them, but she can clarify that one perhaps.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tanea, for coming today. I always admire your passion for helping to support some important community issues, and we accept that that we want to do a lot more, and we should be, and it's been highlighted that we do need to do that in partnership. So I think it's something that we should continue to work together with, including with the housing task force. So you have you have already voiced some great ideas as well during that task force meeting. Insofar as the workers at St Kevin's, yes, they are on temporary work visas, and they do hope to one day bring their families here. So there is a trend that is starting with them that are here on longer term visas, that they would eventually bring some of their partners over to work here. But that is a work in progress and does depend on the immigration settings and accommodation options that are available. So thank you, Tanea.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
James. Okay, councillors, move on to confirmation of previous meeting minutes. So 4.1 is those minutes aren't ready yet, but 4.2, the minutes from the meeting on the 4th of July. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. They were in the agenda addendum.
Is that there's a matter in the public excluded section of those minutes that I'd like to raise.
We'll deal with that in public excluded.
Yes.
So is there anything from these minutes? Is someone happy to move? Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Linwood, thank you. Any further comments? Put it that those are adopted. Those in favour, please say aye. And those against, that is carried. Right, so let's need to move back to the original agenda. Okay, so now we are on 5.1 and talking about freedom camping, and welcome Andrew Bardsley to the council chamber.
Morning, councillors. On the 6th of June this year, the government introduced the Self-Contained Motor Vehicle Legislation Act 2023, which is incorporated into the Freedom Camping Act 2011. As a result of that, there are some minor changes that need to be made to our bylaw so that we fall into step with the Act. They're very minor changes around definitions. One of the advantages of the change was that it specifically defines what freedom camping is now and what self-contained is in regards to vehicles. Basically, what people are now required to do is have their vehicles certified and have a plumbed in toilet, for want of a better explanation. That will be phased in over the next 2 years, with the current certification, which is the blue stickers that you see on vehicles, will be phased out, and there's a new green sticker system, and vehicles will be required to be certified and actually modified by a registered gas fitter and plumber, which will be part of a government organised initiative. Welcome any questions in regards to the changes.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's I'm happy with what I've read, and as it's only a housekeeping matter, I'm more than happy to move that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you. I'll just take that as a notice of motion at the moment, but Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I have a couple of questions, if I may. I suppose the one that there's the question about the exemption from freedom camping for people who are homeless, i.e. unable to live in appropriate residential accommodation, which the parliamentary legislation describes as dwelling house, flat, hotel, motel, boarding house or camping ground. And if any of those are available and they are able to stay in such appropriate residential accommodation, they're therefore not homeless. But I can see this ending up in court and people saying, I can't stay in those places because I can't afford them. Ergo, I am homeless. Ergo, I'm allowed to camp. Now, are you concerned about that? And also, why have we not got that new definition of homelessness incorporated in the bylaw? That's question number one.
That issue's been raised by a number of councils. We had a meeting recently where the consensus was that councils will just take it on a case-by-case scenario, where when we come across people who want to identify as, not want to identify as being homeless, some people choose to live in their camper vans and travel around, and other people have no choice. We're quite lucky here. We haven't had a large number of those instances. Our Freedom Camping Ambassador last summer came across a few and were able to give advice to those people, and actually nobody was moved on as a result of their homelessness. We're actually able to find more appropriate places for them to be, and we worked with Stronger Waitaki and putting together a brochure to assist people in regards to that. In regards to your question about why is it not put into our bylaw, well, it's actually part of the Act now, so it doesn't need to be part of the bylaw. And initially it was more of a guidance note from MBIE in regards to how you deal with homeless people, and this is just formalising it by putting it into the Act. Yes, there will be some grey areas, and we just need to use our common sense. And as I said, we deal with each situation when we come across it, and Stronger Waitaki and the support agencies have been really good in regards to helping us in regards to that.
One other question. Thank you, Mayor Kircher. If you look at, again, on this agenda, page 26, we talk, the new Act has redefines it, has a new definition of the motor vehicle. Talks about it being the same. Motor vehicle has the same meaning as in section 2.1 of the Land Transport Act 1998, but it then goes on to add a new category of vehicles that hasn't been included before, which are these vehicles called slide-on vehicles, which are units used that are capable of being transported by or being loaded on a vehicle. And when we look at our bylaw on page 39, we haven't included that new slide-on category of vehicles in the definition. And I would suggest that if we don't have it in there, we can't actually penalise people for using those slide-on vehicles. If you look at page 4 of the bylaw, or page 39 of the agenda, the definition of a vehicle doesn't include the newly incorporated slide-on vehicle provisions that are described in the Act on page 26 of this agenda.
In relation to that, our bylaw always defaults back to the Freedom Camping Act. And in the Freedom Camping Act, it defines the changes in regards to what a vehicle is. For want of clarity, we could certainly add that in there, but yeah, like just to avoid any confusion for people, it would be a simple matter of just adding that in there.
I think it would be wise because we've incorporated the other changes in the new legislation.
Sometimes in these bylaws, I mean, it does pay if it's subject to other legislation, which may change over time, referring to that legislation rather than the specifics of it, might actually be the wiser idea. But perhaps, you know, whether it refers to that act, it could then say what currently that is, but it's, you know, if that changes, then the act does take priority over that. So some wording like that, I think, if you're able to do that.
I mean, we could change the whole section to vehicle has the same meaning as set out in the Freedom Camping Act 2011, and then people just can go to the Act and it has all the definitions there.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Councillor Palalele.
Thank you through the chair. I just wanted to follow up with Councillor Hopkins' query around homelessness and the definition. You know, like in the bylaw, are we meant to provide procedures like guidelines around what to do so they don't get penalised? And you know, like there's a process for what our staff are able to do, so it's not punitive, but you know, like there's some support and guidelines around how to approach those issues.
No, that doesn't require us to do that, and so therefore neither does the bylaw. You can't. It's a social issue, obviously, with people who are homeless, and we can't put a process in place for our officers to follow because each situation is completely different. So, in line with the Act, it basically is saying that anybody who identifies as homeless and fits those criteria, and I would say there's actually quite a few criteria that aren't listed there. We would just use common sense, and our approach here in this district is that we don't penalise, and we never have penalised anybody who is living in their vehicle. It is punitive, and the government's recognised that, and that's why they've put it into the Act. And it's never our intention. It's not our intention to ever issue an infringement. And now through the Act, it means that we can't. So we use alternative means, and that's. I said we've worked with Stronger Waitaki to be able to provide them information. We're very limited if people choose to live in their vehicles, and some people do choose to live in their vehicles and they don't want assistance from government agencies or other agencies such as the Salvation Army, then we can give them that advice and guidance, but then we have to work with them in regards to them staying in an area which is contentious under our bylaw, but we would never infringe them, and now we can't.
Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Andrew. On notice on page 17, the new national rule applies to motor vehicles, meaning default position is freedom camping and a tent on local authority land is permitted. I don't know, in our bylaw it's probably not. But will we be reviewing that at some stage if we do have that flexibility? Because I'd imagine there'd be some place in the community that they might advocate for certain tenting in areas.
Yeah, that was an area in our bylaw where we didn't specifically previously mention a tent, but that was we thought that was considered in regards to camping and was captured under that actual definition of camping. Now, with the changes to the Act, tent is specifically mentioned as freedom camping. So then we would default to that, which means that a tent now, because a tent can't be certified. And that was a grey area where people were getting around the bylaw. We didn't really come across too many issues. Often the tents were associated with a camping vehicle and they could use the facilities in the camping vehicle. So we used a bit of a pragmatic approach to that, a practical approach to that, and just dealt with it on those merits. But anybody who's just camping on their own and their vehicle's not certified, then that would now be a breach of the bylaw.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson, if you're still happy to move that, and I'll just suggest some other additional wording where. So basically, the council approves the amendments to the Responsible Freedom Camping Bylaw 2021 as set out in attachments 1 and 2, with additional references to the Freedom Camping Act as appropriate. You have to move that. Okay, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Hopkins. Any further discussion? I'll put it then. Those in favour, please say aye. And those against? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay. Find the next item. So moving now to excuse me, adoption of the Waitaki Destination Management Plan, and just pass over